Let me tell you the pressure this guy's feeling now. The weight of the entire country is on his shoulders, and that is no exaggeration.
I suppose the strangest thing, Alan, that has been coming out of the shooting is the fact that it's an indoor complex for the most part, except for the outdoor events.
And they weren't the only ones in Olympic difficulty. Tasmania seceded, as reported by the Hobart Mercury.
Tasmania's official Olympic team newspaper.
And Radio 7ZR in Hobart.
Tasmania's Olympic medal tally remains at 2 bronze after some disappointments over the weekend.
And ABC TV in Tasmania.
And Tim O'Shannessy earned Tasmania's second bronze medal of the Games.
A belated good evening. Some more Olympian journalism later if we have time. And I say that because even the most cursory review of our media's performance on the backpacker murder case will be lengthy. The first question is why? Justice has taken its course and it's been seen to have been done. Why are the tabloids so obsessed with crime? Bertrand Russell knew. 75 years ago, almost exactly, he wrote this in the Atlantic Monthly, discussing the dehumanising effect of modern industrial society, a life, he said, against instinct.
The result of this life against instinct is that industrial populations tend to be listless and trivial, in constant search of excitement, delighted by a murder.
7 murders, then, are something no tabloid can afford to miss, no matter the cost. Look how seriously 7 took the task of trivialising and exciting.
Good evening and welcome to this special 1-hour edition of Today Tonight, which replaces our scheduled program, Talk to the Animals.
That important. Print and television had prepared their special coverage of the Milat verdict well in advance. Then all they could do was wait until the jury said guilty. Print had been working on its slogans.
Beast of Belanglo.
Belanglo Butcher.
Ivan the Terrible.
The Belanglo Monster.
Belanglo Butcher.
Butcher Milat.
Butcher of Belanglo.
It doesn't seem to have occurred to the tabloid intellect that reducing it all to a catchphrase or a silly schoolyard joke like
Ivan the Terrible
is ineffably demeaning for the people he killed and their families. 7 and 9, being great tabloid minds, thought alike.
You've taken away from us something that can never be given back.
I could only describe him as a very, very sick man. He was a psychotic killer.
They even trivialised journalism itself, grandiosely calling their cobbled-together leftovers investigations.
Tonight we'll investigate those 7 brutal murders and the man who committed them. We'll take you into the mind of Ivan Milat.
Tonight, in this special investigation, we speak with the families of his victims.
Curiously, the TV specials didn't seem so concerned about the 7 murdered people, going to great lengths instead to run what the jury couldn't be told interviews about earlier claims against Milat. What was I saying about tabloid minds thinking alike?
For the first time, the victims who got away.
This morning, for the first time, an insider's view of the backpacker investigation.
Tonight, his story for the first time in all its chilling detail.
Tonight, she speaks for the first time about what happened when she and her girlfriend accepted a lift with Ivan Milat. Tonight, for the first time, she reveals publicly how she identified Ivan Milat as a suspect.
At that point, she broke loose by just, sort of unlocking her arms like this.
Even the "for the first time" claim was wobbly. Chris Masters had had that interview 2 years earlier.
At that point, she unhooked her hands and punched him in the face.
True it is that they were nasty quickies, but if you lay on the portentous music and moody shots, people might mistake them for real documentaries.
The Belanglo State Forest is a peaceful, almost unremarkable part of Australia.
How Task Force Air managed to miss a crucial clue like the lead from Paul Onions
On Sunday morning, the orthodoxy of Me Too journalism was all too obvious, with Milat's photo album opened up not just for the Murdoch Sunday Telegraph, but also the Murdoch Sunday Herald Sun, the Murdoch Sunday Mail in Brisbane, the Murdoch Sunday Tasmanian, the Murdoch Daily Telegraph the next day, the Murdoch Courier Mail, the Murdoch Adelaide Advertiser, and the Murdoch Australian. There are newspapers in Australia that don't belong to Murdoch, including the Sunday Age, but how could you tell? Of course, no coverage of crime, be it a self-important investigation or merely the ABC's 7 o'clock bulletin, can be taken seriously without a reenactment. Hence, the ABC's Tim Palmer tried his hand with a mini film noir, shot in the rain, not to recreate the original event, but because it was raining the night they shot it.
Police would later allege that Milat held the women, tying up one and having sex with the other.
Only to be expected that the car would be different in every dramatisation.
She says that, terrified for her life, she was then raped by Milat.
Next dramatised encounter, this is Nine's reenactment of the incident Four Corners reported back in 1994.
At that point, she unhooked her hands and punched him in the face and screamed, "Run!"
The women hid for hours in the bush and finally escaped.
Channel 7's version?
So we just flew open, out of the door, down the dirt track road, and I remember running down and screaming because I could hear her behind me and screaming, "Hit the ditch, hit the ditch."
60 Minutes opened their checkbook to obtain a trial witness's voiceover for their reenactment.
I was just, obviously panicking and just running off away from the vehicle. I heard him shout, "Stop else I'll shoot, stop else I'll shoot."
But 7 was forced to get the Australian's court reporter to provide a second-hand version.
Onions leapt out of the car and started running for his life up the Hume Highway, with the driver chasing him. And at one point, a shot was fired as well. And Onions thought, if I don't get away now, I'll never get away.
It really is remarkable how closely tabloid practitioners conform to a standard. Titles, music, reenactments. Perhaps they even shared camera tracks for their reporters' pieces in the forest.
The person probably drove a four-wheel drive, knew the Belanglo forest, possibly lived locally, had access to guns, and probably picked up the victims as they were hitching from Liverpool.
5 more hitchhikers were to follow. This is the story of those young men and women and the anguish of their families.
So nice for Channel 7 to find Neil Mercer, surplus to requirements police reporter, something with which he's comfortable. More of the concurrence in technique. Little chapter headings so you can tell the commercials are over and the investigative report's back on. I was particularly impressed by R.G. Carlton's barrister impersonation on 60 Minutes.
Can you see that?
No. No way in this world.
Would you lie to protect yourself and other members of your family?
The look over the top of his glasses is very barristerial, and so is the trick of not looking at the witness under cross-examination.
So you are 100% sure that he was there on Boxing Day 91?
Oh, definitely 100% sure.
If and when the court finds otherwise, what does that make you?
You tell us, Richard.
Now, Mrs. Carolyn Milat, you said earlier that you wouldn't lie.
That's right.
But didn't you lie to the court?
No, I didn't. And why do you say that?
Hasn't he got a nice line in pained expressions?
Or would you accept that it looks a bit sus, then?
No, I don't accept that it looks a bit sus.
What, that there's the property of murdered women in your garden shed and you reckon it's not sus?
Frank Galbally, look out. The Sunday Age made a bad blue by using repeatedly the wrong photo. This is Richard Milat, not Ivan. And the NT News's mistake was even worse.
Milat?
No, it isn't. That's an officer who took him away in handcuffs. The Illawarra Mercury must have agonised about leaving the story off Monday's front page, but what could they do?
You beauty, Louise!
A local girl had won a silver medal in Atlanta. Still, inside, Liz Hannon had a couple of local angles on the backpacker murders.
The Illawarra has had strong links with the Belanglo murders.
Wingecarribee Shire Mayor Jim Tuddenham says it woke up the sleepy Southern Highlands.
The verdict didn't make the cover of Time magazine, except for this. But inside, Steve Waterson included some quotes to prove Time is no tabloid. Hannah Arendt.
Banality of evil.
And Joseph Conrad.
Men alone are quite capable of every wickedness.
Who Weekly, which had intended this to be their cover, simply handled the verdict by wrapping around a further 10 pages with a fresh cover using the photograph that cost them $100,000 for contempt of court when they first used it 2 years ago. Meanwhile, back at 9, Ray was mopping up, getting Mr. Packer his money's worth.
Greta, thanks for your time. Did you sleep any more peacefully at the weekend knowing that Ivan Milat was in jail for life?
It's a variation on how do you feel. They'd all better pray Milat loses any appeal, because a fair retrial after all that stuff would be quite impossible. Enough of that. Back to Atlanta, whence the Fairfax Herald's Jacqueline Magnay had some startling news.
The Australian swimmers emerged dripping wet from the main pool.
And in the same paper, a sub demonstrated ignorance.
Phil Rogers, with 3 small rings tattooed under his heart.
5 rings? You know, the Olympics. And we were given some instruction in crime, how to make an Atlanta pipe bomb. Does the chief censor know about this? Roy Masters wrote some them and us trash.
Marie-Josée Perec, the aloof, imperious 28-year-old Frenchwoman.
Kathy Freeman, the 23-year-old waif-like Aborigine. Like an excited child, as if her mother had told her to drink plenty.
Perec runs with the imperiousness of Marie Antoinette going to the guillotine.
Masters' colleague John Huxley is equally shaky on history.
The Munich Games of 1972, when Israeli terrorists murdered 11 hostages.
Is that a fact, Mr. Huxley? Good night to you.